Gabrielle, thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm so happy to be here. Very excited.
Well, you're in Mexico City, a city that I've not been to, only the airport, so I'm dying to get there.
Well, I have a spare room.
Well, well, that's good. That's good to know. I'll have to write that down.
Yeah.
So how long have you been in Mexico City?
I have been in Mexico City permanently, like living here since January of 2020.
Oh, nice. So kind of right before COVID.
Yes, right
Wow.
before COVID. I actually moved here for a job at a school as the English coordinator, and our first day was my first day was January 6th, and March was either 13th or 17th. They sent us home for what we thought was a long weekend, and it turned into a year and a half.
Wow.
And then because of the pandemic and, finances, it was a private school, things like that, my position was dissolved. And then
Damn.
I know, it's craziness.
Wow.
But yeah, so I've been here permanently since January 2020. Studied in Cuernavaca, Mexico in 2000 when I was a little bit younger and a little bit more sprite. And the family that I lived with, I was very close to. I've come back and visited multiple times. My parents live in Mexico, in Sonora, which is northern Mexico. And so Mexico's always been my backyard. I'm from Arizona, and just always been kind of where my heart and soul belonged, right?
That's so awesome. That's so awesome. Well, today we're going to be talking about something really important, and that is residency and visas. And everybody always has questions about it, and it's super confusing to many people. So let's just start with the basics of the types of visas that are available for foreigners.
Absolutely. So if someone is coming to Mexico to visit and they know that they're coming here specifically for tourism, they will come in on what is called a forma migratoria multiple. It's called an FMM for short. That's what most people know it as. And it's technically a tourist permit. You can be given up to 180 days legally. But that up to 180 days needs to be taken with a grain of salt. Previously, if you came in as a visitor, you're automatically given 180 days. Things changed in November, and now they're a little bit stricter. They want to know your itinerary, and they want to know why you're going to be here if you want the full 180 days. People have been getting a lot less time. There are a lot of theories surrounding why that is. One of them is that a lot of people lived here for many years on tourist visas, not tourist visas, tourist permits. It's not a visa. Just doing border runs. They'd be here for 6 months or, 5.5 months. They'd run to Guatemala for like 10 days, come back, get another 180 days. And they do that for years, which actually causes the Mexican government to lose a lot of money as well. That's some theories that we have. So that's number one. That's a visitor.
If you're at immigration, can you request 180 days?
You can, yeah. And some will be like, sure. And it also depends on which airport you come into. Mexico City and Cancun being the most touristy, the city, Mexico City, obviously, the most connections are the strictest. A lot of times they'll be like, what are you doing here? How are you traveling for 180 days? Because if you're doing tourism, you shouldn't be working. Because a lot of people will come for 6 months, but they're digital nomads. So that's the basics. That's, you want to come, you want to travel, you want to come a little bit long term, but you don't want to commit. That's what you would do, is you would get that tourist permit.
So what are the other than visas? You have temporary residency, and then the permanent resident. Yeah?
Correct. So you have temporary residency, which is either based on financial solvency, which means that financial solvency is you prove to the consulate that you have enough income to support yourself while living in Mexico. And you would have to start that process at a consulate outside of Mexico. And they typically request bank statements, or bilingual problems. Inversiones, investments, or Basically, yeah, it's basically either just your income or your investments.
Is there a minimum?
There is an average. So depending on which consulate you go to, because again, consistent inconsistency, the lowest right now that we have seen is $1,728 in income after taxes per month for 6 consecutive months. That is a standard per month for 6 consecutive months. And then the highest I have seen is like 27, I think 48, something like that. And that's in Milwaukee. Why? Why Milwaukee of all places is super high? Who knows? You would think it'd be like Manhattan or something, New York or DC, and then, or you can do 12 months ending balance in savings of between 41 to 45,000 USD. And some offices will allow you to show multiple accounts and they'll add them up for you. Some want them to be all in one account. Some want it to be a liquid savings account, like your Chase savings account. Some will take investments, like a Vanguard account. Various various differences. So when people ask me like, what documents am I going to need to go to the consulate, I'm like, you're going to want to email that specific consulate where you're going and ask them very specifically, what documents do I need? Do they need to be originals? Do they need to have a signature from the bank? Do they need to have a notary? Do they need to be notarized? All these different things, because each office is different.
Wow.
Yeah. And then on top of that, there's another layer that the consulates have started doing with the whole, digital nomad remote work life. Some of the offices have been asking, if you're using income, that people have letters from their employers stating that they are remote employees and that they will be remote employees indefinitely. So that it shows that they have permission to, work from wherever they want. So that is another extra piece that the offices have been asking for and have been kind of throwing some applicants off. They get there and they're like, I don't have a letter from my employer. So I just tell all my clients now, just assume that you need that letter just to be safe. So you don't go through all this time to get to a consulate, get to your appointment, go through all your bank statements. And then they're like, no, you need a letter from your employer. So I'm trying to prep them as much as I can with the knowledge that I have based on previous clients' experiences at the consulate.
And then permanent residency?
Well, there's 2 other temporary residency routes. Actually, there are a few. So, you can get residency here if you are married. If you marry a Mexican, a Mexican citizen, you can get 2 years of temporary. You would get 2 years of temporary residency, and then you can convert to permanent residency. You can also get residency via a spouse that already has residency, called family unity, and so the spouse would qualify in the U.S. and then they can either bring you as a dependent. You have to show another amount of income. Sorry, there's a dog walking down the street now. Another amount of income, much lower than the monthly, and you can either qualify at the consulate, or you can come down here and do family unity, and that doesn't require any financials. So you can do that as well. The other is a work sponsorship, which if you want to come and you get a Mexican organization or a Mexican company to sponsor you. Those temporary residency, those are all the temporary residency options.
So before we get to actually permanent residency, then, how much does it cost, and what is the main difference? So it means that you can, freely go in and out of Mexico, but I think you have to renew it every year or something, right? Is that the main difference?
So for temporary residency, if you do, your standard financial solvency, you go to the consulate, you show your bank statements, etc., you get 1 year. And then after 1 year, you can renew for 1, 2, or 3 years. You don't have to do the renewal each year. If you are someone that can pay that upfront fee to the government, I always suggest to do the 3 years, and then you don't have to worry about going back to the office until your 4 years, because the first 1 year and then the 3 years are up to convert to permanent residency. The fee changes every year, but right now for temporary residency, the first year is 4,793 pesos, and then you pay 48 US dollars at the consulate. If you're in the US, you pay 62, I believe it's Canadian dollars in Canada, and then you can have other costs if you hire a facilitator. That will usually range between 150 to, I've heard of some facilitators charging like up to 1,000 US dollars. So that can just really range on where you are, what you want them to do for you, how much legwork they're doing, things like that. So that is that. And then if you renew for 3 years, it is, I think it's 10,000 something pesos. But doing that 3-year renewal actually saves you almost a year's worth of fees. If you do the payment in the chunk, it saves you almost a year's worth of fees. So it's really worth it if you have, approximately $500 to shell out, which most people opt for that unless they have some random reason or, some valid reason not to.
Well, just not having the headache, having to do it all the time.
It's so nice.
A year is nothing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And the other thing, so here's a thing that throws people off. So when you go to the consulate, you get approved. You have 180 days to enter Mexico to then go start the process for your card. And once in Mexico, you have 30 days to start the process to convert your card. Your expiration date is not the day you get your card. It's the day you enter Mexico. So say you got approved on January 1st, you got to Mexico on March 1st, but you didn't get your card until May 1st, your renewal date is 10 months away and not 12 months away. And you can start your renewal 30 days prior to expiration.
Wow. See, these are all those things that,
yeah,
like how are you?
Yeah, it's a lot to keep track of. And, I've had so many people be like, I need to renew my card. It expires tomorrow. And I'm like, they don't have any appointments available. But right now, all expiration dates are actually suspended due to the pandemic and COVID and lots of things. So I think that's going to stay in action until the end of 2022. So that's temporary.
So then,
the basics.
Just the basics. I know, basically, yeah. And that's if everything goes smoothly.
Right,
So,
right.
At what point do people then apply for their permanent residency?
So permanent residency can be applied for at the consulate. You can start with permanent residency if you have the money to show it. So permanent residency requires a significantly higher amount. Monthly, it needs to be approximately 4,400 US dollar equivalent. Or if it's savings, it needs to be approximately 145,000 US dollar equivalent. Many offices will only approve you for permanent residency if you're of retirement age. So they want you to be pulling from a pension, Social Security, a 401k, something like that. Some other offices are a little bit more flexible. And if you have the finances and you're, in that 50 to 60 range, I've had some even younger. I had a 42-year-old get permanent residency right out the chute. But he had a lot of money to show for it. You can get permanent residency at the consulate. Now, if you are not...
Right away. So you don't have to get temporary.
Correct. Yeah, right away. And a lot of retirees do this. A lot of retirees will do this. They'll go in with their pensions, and as long as they have the income, and they're approved for permanent, and you don't have to worry really about anything. The one downfall to permanent residency that a lot of people face is, as a permanent resident, you can't drive a foreign plated vehicle in Mexico. So if a lot of people are like, I know, they're like, but I want to bring my whatever car. And I'm like, you would have to legally import it then, which is a lot of time, money, effort, something I don't really know much about, but I know you have to actually import the vehicle. So, that is like the biggest downfall really to permanent residency. You're not affected in any other way other than that. And if you're in the free zone, which a lot of people don't realize what the free zone is, it's the state of Sonora and then the zone right across the border, like Tijuana, Ensenada, a lot of the Baja, and then Sonora is the free zone. You can continue to have a foreign plated vehicle as a permanent resident. And there's a lot of laws surrounding that and different rules and things like that. But that's just one thing that I've had people say, yeah, I qualified for permanent, but I took temporary because I want to bring my car. And I'm like, oh, I've never been so attached to a car. So that's not me, but wow. I know people are. My father being one of them, he would be like, no, my car is coming to Mexico with me. You do you. You do you. I enjoy riding the metro, not owning a car. I love not thinking about gas prices. And having,
kidding.
What? I got to renew my insurance? Shoot. No, haven't thought about it. But yeah, so that's my personal take on owning a car. But I know I've had people do it. My dad would be one of them for sure. But he lives in the free zone, so he doesn't have to worry about it. Yeah. So that's the first step to permanent residency. The second one would be after 4 years of temporary, you can convert. And it's a pretty straightforward process. Like you don't have to do any sort of application. You just go in and you have to submit certain paperwork. You have to pay the fee. And, you go through the same more or less procedure at the immigration office that you do for your temporary residency. And then you get it. It's kind of like Mexico's like, congratulations, you made it 4 years. Here you go. But yeah, there's no needing of, proving financials, nothing like that at this point. Someday that may change, but at this point, you don't have to do anything like that. And then the other the most direct route to permanent residency is birthing a baby on Mexican soil. Give me a baby, I get you, because the baby automatically has citizenship, you automatically get permanent residency.
Right. But if you're 6 years old, you're not
birthing babies, no. I think there was an adoption option, but I might look into that for myself someday down the road, but I'm not far off from permanent residency, so I'll adopt once I have the money to do so.
And what's the fee for permanent residency?
Permanent residency is 5,776 pesos this year. It goes up every January.
And so then once you have permanent residency, that's it, right? It's like a green card. Yeah. You don't have to, or do you actually, no, green card, you have certain requirements, like you have to come back and forth to the country. But with permanent residency,
there are no in-country requirements in Mexico. It's a fabulous, fabulous situation. There are a couple things that have to be done. Every 10 years, you have to renew your picture. And then temporary or permanent residency, if you leave the country, say you fly to the States, you actually do have to check out of the country and then you check back in. It's almost the opposite. You get the same form that you get, it's the FMM form, but it's filled out differently and you turn in the opposite piece of paper. So when you leave the airport, when you leave inside the airport, you would go to the INM desk, the immigration desk, which is usually after security. Well, in Mexico City, it's after security. And you check out. You fill out a form. You give them half the form. You hold on to the other form while you're out of the country. And then you turn it into immigration when you come back in. And so that they know that you are a resident. And you want to make sure that you never forget to do that. Because if you accidentally enter as a visitor, you nullify your residency. So that's a very, very important thing to make sure to keep track of.
When your residency is going to expire, it's really up to you to make that appointment. Yeah. Like they won't warn you.
No. Now, for my clients, for example, I have a database, so I know what day that you got your card. So I have a kind of an idea, so I know when the renewals are coming up, and I'll send them an email or a text or a WhatsApp or smoke signals, whatever you got to do to remind them, hey, you're going to want to start the renewal process within the next couple of weeks. Let's start working on making you an appointment.
Yeah, no, it's scary because that people aren't keeping track of this stuff,
and a lot of people don't know that your card starts, your expiration is the day that you entered the country and not the day you got your card. So there's that too. And the way that appointments have been going, it can be up to a couple months before you can get an appointment. So even though you start the process right as soon as you come back in, you might not get an appointment for 2 more months. And so, you're thinking, oh yeah, I have another year. And I'm like, oh no, you have like 9 months and you have to renew.
Right.
So yeah, that's why doing
Right.
the 3-year renewal also, if you're a temporary resident, is just so much easier. So much easier. So yeah.
Right. No, it's true. It's absolutely true. And so what do you do with your clients? So you're helping to facilitate?
Yeah, so I'm technically an immigration facilitator, or in Mexican, in Spanish, a gestora migratoria. And so I facilitate. Clients will contact me before they go to the consulate. They're like, hey, I want to get residency. Where do I start? Or they will I'll kind of guide them through that process. Be like, okay, so you're going to need this. You're going to generally need this. Depending on how you're employed or depending on where your income comes from, these are the consulates you might want to try, because each consulate kind of has their own way of doing things. Like, some won't take you if you are self-employed. Some won't take you in the US if you have foreign bank accounts. Some will take you, but your foreign bank accounts need to be notarized by, the bank or the embassy or whatever. So everyone has kind of a little specific case. So I'll work with them through that and be like, okay, I would suggest trying this office, this office, this office. And then there are other offices that I know for a fact won't take anyone unless you're from that jurisdiction. So, for example, unless you're a Dallas, Texas resident, or Dallas and surrounding areas, you can't go to the Dallas consulate. San Diego's similar. A lot of the California offices are like that. And then there are a lot of offices that are really what I call user-friendly. I call this whole process consulate shopping. And so I'll help them through that. And then, then I'll do the whole side, Mexican side of things for them. So I'll help them get their appointment. Currently, the online appointment system that we had for a whopping year and a half went down temporarily. We don't know. It's been suspended. We don't know when it's coming back up. So we're kind of back to pre-COVID times, where you go to an office, you line up, and then they give you a date to come back a couple weeks later. And I will guide my clients through all of that. I will go with them to the office, help them, navigate that process. And then for their appointment, I draw up all of their documents. I'll draw up all their documents. I'll meet with them. If they're in Mexico City, I'll go to the office on the day of their appointment with them. You can't go into the office with them, but I'll, make sure we have all of their copies. I'll put all of their paper in order, their documents in order, go to the bank, make that bank payment with them, and, then wait for them to hopefully come out with their card that day. And then, oops, I don't know what I just said, sorry. And then, for clients that are out, because I'll work with clients all over the country, so I'll do the same thing basically, except I'll have a Zoom call with them. I'll make sure that they've signed the papers in the right place, tell them what to expect, give them a long checklist, kind of give them some key words and some key phrases that they might hear. But usually my clients come back and they're like, I don't know what magic you worked, but I literally didn't even have to say a word. And then some immigration offices can be really picky, and they just want things done a very particular way. And so I've had clients where they're like, okay, so then now they want it written this way. So we rewrite it, they go back. Luckily it was a small office where you can just walk right in. There's one person there, and they're like, no, we want it written this way, but we want it on this piece of paper. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So, I mean, these are all the sort of things to kind of expect. Like, especially if you use a facilitator, it can be really painless, but at the same time, you are dealing with a government, office in a foreign country. So it's going to be, you might hit some obstacles, or some topes, as we call them, some road bumps, speed bumps, topes. Oh, I need to start using that.
Everyone knows.
Yeah,
topes.
I need to start using that. You're going to have some topes on this route. But yeah, but I try to make it as easy as possible. I try to, let my clients know, like, you may not be used to being super just like, you got to go with the flow. This is Mexico. The people are super friendly. They're usually very helpful at the offices, but I mean, it's a bureaucratic process. Like, think of it as the DMV times 10 in a foreign language in a foreign country. like who enjoys the DMV, right? So,
That's awesome. So kind of like as we wrap this up, what are there any kind of is there any kind of advice that you give people, who are looking to make the move? So before I've even
right,
moved there, what should I be thinking about? What should I be
right,
preparing? Uh, if I think that this is where I want to land and I want to spend a good chunk amount of time in
right.
Mexico.
In regards to residency or just kind of life in Mexico in general?
Residency.
So making sure that you get your documents prepared, making sure, knowing that you are going to, oh, see, this coffee shop is so fabulous. They're going to take my dog and walk it for me while we're having this conversation. Bye, Xochitl.
You gotta love
Bye,
Mexico.
Xochitl. But she doesn't want to go because the other one's sitting here. So you want to first, you got to make sure that you qualify. And that's when I talk about kind of the consulate shopping. You want to make sure that you qualify. A lot of people get their hopes up and then they found out that the rate went up 22% this year because it's associated with Mexican minimum wage. So they have the calculations they use are based on Mexican minimum wage. And so, making sure that you qualify. A lot of people get their hopes up and they're like, wait, what? What? If you are going as like a married couple, you're going to need to get your marriage certificate apostilled. If you have children, you're going to need birth certificates. And birth certificates apostilled. And those things usually come from the Secretary of State where they were generated. And it's not a horribly complicated process, but it's just an extra step.
Yeah, in the butt.
Exactly.
I've done it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I adopted my daughter, so yeah, we had to get
All
like
the things.
a million
Right.
things.
Right.
Yeah,
Just expect that there's going to be a lot of paperwork. They're usually very friendly and very helpful, but they also do things their way, and their way is not our way. And so, you got to just
right.
kind of understand that you're going to need to be flexible. Another thing to be sure to clarify if you're applying for temporary residency is that you need to be as clear as day that you are a remote employee. You will not be taking a job from a Mexican. You have no intentions of finding employment here, that you are coming here because, and talk as much as possible about how much, Mexico is a fabulous country. You enjoy the culture. You'd like to immerse yourself more in the language. Anything like that, positive about Mexico, also helps. But the key, like I can't emphasize enough more that how you can't work here if you're applying for temporary residency via solvency. If you're a permanent resident, you can work here. You're a resident, you have the legal right to work here. But yeah, temporary residency, you need to make sure that you're ensuring that you will not be taking any jobs away from any of the locals.
So if people want to get in touch,
There was one other little thing I forgot to mention. It's a step in the process. When you go to the consulate, you get a stamp in your passport. And then when you come through the airport, and I can't emphasize this enough. When you go through the airport, you need to show that the first time after getting that stamp in your passport, you absolutely must show them that stamp and get an FMM that they mark Canje, CANJE, with 30 days on it. That is the key piece of information that you're going to need when you go to your immigration appointment. If you enter as a visitor on accident, or if they're just not paying attention, I mean, I've had clients come through, and they just got maybe a new agent, and he's like, I don't know what this is. I'm like, I don't care if you have to call a supervisor. You do not move from that station until, when you go through and you're at the little immigration station, until you have the correct form filled out. And I always give my clients I have a photo an example of that, because you come in as a visitor, you can either nullify everything that you did at the consulate, or you may have to leave the country and re-enter. Or if you're lucky, you can go to the immigration office and get it fixed, but it's still a process. So these are just some tips, some things. I can't emphasize enough the importance of the CONHE and the CONHE FMM. So yeah,
Oh my God.
key piece of
Yeah.
information. Key piece of information.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. I had some clients.
And I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a process. We got it taken care of, but it didn't go as smoothly as things could have if it'd gotten done the first time around. But yeah.
So Gabrielle, if people want to reach you, how do they
I
do
have
so?
a Facebook page. My page is just Dr. G Mexican Residency and Immigration. And yeah, I'm pretty active around there. But yeah, if anybody can feel free to shoot me messages. I also run a WhatsApp group that's very active with people asking questions. Like, oh, I'm going to the Denver consulate this week. Has anybody been there? What was your experience? What do they need? Or anybody been to a consulate that takes Vanguard accounts? What did they ask for? So it's been really helpful just having like anecdotal and real time evidence of what's going on at the consulates, and kind of the benefit of using a facilitator versus an immigration attorney, because we kind of know what's going on both sides. Like, I may not know the law to a T, but I know what's happening in real life, in real time.